let's see. So I think we should be getting underway here shortly. We're still looking to load in, but shouldn't be too much longer. Yeah, of course, just waiting a couple seconds. But of course, welcome back after a little bit of a break here to another round of LSR action. Of course, we're back with Group 1 and with our first race after the winter break. Definitely good to see a full timing table, even at the start of the Grand Prix here this afternoon. So should be very, very interesting. It's got a bunch, 20 drivers. Of course, 18 minutes left to go in qualifying. But of course, welcome to the Seaside here in the Netherlands, as of course a couple of drivers making their way out the pit lane, and that'll be a Haas leading the way. And that will be Thomas D will be first out the gates as of this point to get us back underway with some Group 1 action. Of course, Group 1 back after a little bit of a challenge last time out with Austria. Again, apologies for how that race turned out. Definitely was disappointing. But of course, after a couple of weeks hiatus, we're back now with round number 8. Of course, Zandvoort, very, very technical, very challenging. Qualifying going to be very, very important. Of course, have a nice, clear qualifying. We'll see if those conditions hold out for the race. But of course, if you're just joining in, and maybe this is your first time here in an LSR stream, definitely welcome. Of course, I'm your host, Vacant for today. Just me up here providing commentary in the booth. And so I'll try to keep up with it as best I can. Our other commentator, James, had some family stuff. So hopefully he's enjoying that. But Thomas D going to get underway. But yeah, very short laps here around the circuit Zandvoort. Of course, we got 2 relatively short circuits in a row. And of course, as Thomas heads down into turn 1, of course, there's, not a whole ton of overtaking opportunities on this circuit. Of course, you got, a lot of banking, a lot of tight corners. It's a very flowing track. It's a very fun track to drive in game, especially to hot lap. But, again, very challenging to overtake because there's not that many hard braking zones. And those that do often have a nice bit of twistiness before them, as Thomas D making his way now through Sector 2. And I'm a prepared professional, so that's why I'm pulling up a track map right now, so that way I can learn all the Dutch corner names and numbers on the fly. But of course, DRS open now on the back of the Haas as he hits that Sector 2 marking. It's 48.661, so a solid first showing. We should be seeing qualifying times that should break into the 108s, potentially into the 107s in this Premier Division, but certainly much quicker than I am around the circuit. And of course, that DRS wide open at the back of the Haas. He'll come to the line, and the first lap time of the session is a 109.9 out of Thomas D. There's a McLaren coming up from behind him. That's John Wick. Also Waits, who puts in a 109.4. That's Thule, also with a 109.4, splits the two. His teammate of Robbie sets a 109.2, so the Alpha Tauri's going quickly, and Wingish immediately pushing that stick much further as he pops in a 108.3. It's an Alfa Romeo next to the line. Let me see if I can find it. I can't. Who was that? That was Dodoligo with a 110. Let's see. That's an Aston Martin to the line. That's some guy with a 107.3. His teammate of Bono next to the line. He'll go just behind into P6. The second Alfa Romeo, I believe, is just starting in the lap. The Belgian VDV, we'll just say Ali. We'll say Ali. The Belgian currently sitting in ninth. So early on in this qualifying session, it's looking to be McLaren versus Alpha Tauri, but maybe not, as Jojo goes third fastest with a 109.4. It's the 2 Ferraris next across the line. That was Moy Cool, just putting in a very rapid time, going second quickest with a 108.6. So a good showing there from a number of drivers in the early stages. I believe Oni, one of the few drivers still on a lap, as he's coming through the final collection of corners. Of course, not a time on the board yet. Just got one real corner left to go, and then you got the large banking. Of course, the DRS activation point pushed back in this year's game, so you get a little bit more DRS. Oni to the line. That's lap time good enough for P3, a 108.9 from the Mercedes. So it's currently Wingish from Moy Cool from Oni early on in the session. I believe that was, actually no, as I say that, Meixler makes me eat my words. He goes third fastest for Alfa Romeo. Let's see, Viperize, meanwhile, might be on a lap. Of course, might have gotten a little bit of a tow there from his teammate. Of course, just 2 corners left to go for the number 88 Ferrari. Of course, here he comes out of the final corner now. Let's see if he finishes the lap. He will. So Viperize to the line. That lap time, good enough for P9, so ahead of the Aston Martin pairing as of right now. But, of course, 15 times already on the board. And a number of drivers potentially looking to get some lap times in. Oni on an in-lap, as is Meixer. I assume Viperize will be coming in shortly as well. So we'll go ahead and jump on board with JM as I finally pull up Zandvoort track map. So that way, you all know that I'm a professional as I completely butcher Dutch pronunciations. Oh, wow, okay. Yeah, so there we go. So up and over the hill now to end Sector 1. I believe that's turn number 7. So now making his way into turn number 8. I do believe that purple Sector 1 is just for a personal best. But of course, into the very tricky turn 9 and 10, because you want to use all the track on the outside and then keep it real nice and tight. And you got to be very precise coming out of turn number 10 as Rex Haas. So got the Haas duo in 12th and 15th. Of course, JM coming out of the final corner now. And down the pit straight. Where will the Williams go? It's a 109.4, so good enough for P8. Of course, the Red Bull's on a lap. I believe Gawoon Jamie is one of the few on a push lap. Was it? I at least know turn 1, which is Tarzan. I know turn 1 is Tarzan, turn 3 is Hugenholtz, and that Bucht is corner. That's what I assume from this Wikipedia thing that I'm looking at on another screen, so we'll figure that out as we go. And as I say that, Gawoon Jamie goes 12th fastest. Both Red Bulls, only cars on a push lap, and they got a nice free track ahead of them. Of course, they should be fairly quick, as we did lose Thule, so hopefully we can get him back in before the start of the race. Gaming James coming up to the second sector marker. Of course, we'll try to get him back in. 47.8 for Gaming James. As Kluka out of the session, he crashed back at the exit of turn 10, where I was just talking about how challenging it can be just a little while ago. And so one Red Bull out of the session. We'll have to see if Gaming James can make a push to the front for a Red Bull. He'll come to the line. That lap time good enough for P5, so a 109.1 from Gaming James. Put him just ahead of Sneaky Robbie, but not quite enough to crack a little bit further up the order. Meanwhile, Wingish, the provisional pole sitter, I think taking an extra lap to get those tires right into the window that he wants. See, Luca also has left the session, so I'll just take a second to try to get them both back in. So there is one. And then, let me try to find Thule. Yeah, apologies for this. Gotta try and figure it out here. Of course, that's the Red Bull on board with right now. There we go. Let's see. Where is Thule? There it is. Okay. So hopefully we can get both of those drivers back in, of course, with the 20-car grid. Did I miss anything while we were doing that? Waits down a second on his initial time. Oni making his way through Sector 1, so we'll see if he can jump up the order. Wingish coming up to the line to finish his Sector 1. He's actually down on his first lap time, so McLaren looking very rapid right now, as, switch back to the right to Masters Bucht. Before making your way into turn number 9 and 10. And that McLaren looking, very much like it's on rails and really utilizing all that curb, and is going to get a nice little tow from the Haas out in front. And Wingish still up on that first lap time, but a little bit of lap traffic out ahead of him. We'll see if that Haas can stay out of the way. But Wingish with some rapid pace and now getting an extra helping a slipstream out of the final corner and to the line. Let's see where this pairing goes. It's Wingish to a 108.1, so pushing that gap up at the front to half a second. I believe it's Oni putting in a 108.7 into P3, so a good showing from him. And I believe down the rest of the order, not a whole ton of improvements. Thomas was up slightly, though not quite enough to see an increase in position. Let's see if anybody else is on a push lap. We'll stay on board with the Ferrari currently in P2 of Moikuli. Of course, coming up to that second timing marker, and he'll have to pick up a lot of time. He's picked up about a tenth and change, so good early on. There is a spun Alfa Romeo slightly up the road, so hopefully he stays out of the way as we do get see Luca back in, which is a good sign. So here comes Moikuli out of the final corner. Let's see where he goes. Of course, not as much slipstream help, but that lap, a 108.4, so good enough to push that little advantage in P2 a tad bit further, as Oni still in P3. Meixer with that 108.9 still going solid. Viper is a little bit wide there through Hugenholtz, but seemingly keeping it all together. He may be on an in-lap at this point, though. We'll have to keep an eye on him, but he currently sits 7th. Robbie moving fairly solid. He currently sits P8th. Jojo starting no better than P9th, of course, out of the session with the second crash that we've seen. I believe we got a Williams. No, that's JM getting ready to start a lap. Robbie, I believe, is also getting wound up to go, but 6.5 minutes left to go in the qualifying session. Some guy, meanwhile, currently sitting P13, is actually down 8/10, so that's another in-lap there. As everybody, I think, diving into the pit lane, just waiting to... they sound about right to a Canadian lull. Yeah, I mean, I'm surprisingly able to kind of get those. Because I believe that would be referring to the corner names, but yeah, we'll see. I can at least get it close, but I pulled up the Wikipedia photo, and it's just like, oh, that's an interesting set of names. Is taking a look at the Ferraris coming into the pit lane. JM doesn't think he's going to improve. JM crashed as well. So we've got 3 crashes during this qualifying session. As here comes some guy trundling around to get back in. Waits, the only one currently on an outlap, is really just trying to get those tires into that right window that he wants. As you can see, he was locking up those fronts quite a bit. And so we'll see what Waits can do with a clear track. There's also one of the Mercedes coming out of the pit lane. That may be... actually, is that VDV? I believe that is Ali making his way out the pit lane. Of course, currently sitting in P18. Wouldn't expect Kendricks to settle out because we should be seeing the Kendricks special once again, which, if you are new, definitely keep an eye for those red-walled soft compound tires at the start of the race on that Williams. But of course, here comes Waits through Sector 1, through Hunsrung and Rob Slotmaker-Bucht. And I missed his timing as I was checking those corner names. But of course, making his way into turns 7, now turns, what was that? Or is that 8 and 9? I believe that's 8 and 9. No, that was 9 and 10. But of course, you got the blast now down into the chicane at turns number 11 and 12. Very tight and probably the second best overtaking spot on the circuit. Oh yeah, of course. For those of you who are unaware, we did recently, over the holidays, start in LSR Hall of Fame. So congratulations, as Waits actually goes quick enough to go 5th fastest, so a 108.9, just behind Meixer. But congratulations to B-Thumb, Elian Bayan, Yuki, also known as Tano, Crooner, Tommy XXC, Gaming James, Egil DRM, Emre Altuntas, Mango, Bamboo Vegas, Kendricks Forzan, Sevla Flair, also known as Rudy, and Alexis Beast on being those first inductees into the LSR Hall of Fame. Of course, going to be making regular additions to that, so we'll see who all continues to be added to that. Of course, 3 minutes left to go in this session, so wouldn't be shocked to start to see a couple of drivers coming out. Let's go ahead and jump on board with Ali, who's actually down half a second, so might just be taking an extra lap to get those tires into the window he wants, so we'll keep an eye on his lap time. The provisional pole sitter of Wingish seeming to do something similar. Of course, he does have that current 3/10 advantage and got a massive helping of slipstream from the Haas in Sector 3 on his best lap. We'll have to see how much further he can push that advantage, as still no cars coming out, not a lot of cars coming out of the pit lane. Actually, no, one of the Williams, that is Kendrick's actually coming out of the pit lane. I believe there's a Red Bull down at the other end getting ready to come out, and yeah, here comes the cavalry. So everybody going to now be piling out of the pit lane to get prepped for their final push lap. So we'll have to keep an eye on just how chaotic maybe that might get. Viperize, though, may actually, this may actually work to his detriment if he doesn't have enough fuel to push for 2 laps, because he might run right into a little bit of traffic on his push lap. Of course, 2 minutes left to go, so not enough time to get a recharge in. So we'll have to keep an eye on his times. Of course, Wingish definitely bailed on his lap. He's 3.7 seconds down. So, and VDV Ali, 4/10 up early on in the lap. So current 4/10 through Sector 2, rather. Of course, into the final corner now, through turn number 14 and to the line. Where will the Mercedes go? That lap good enough for P13, so a good jump up on the board for the Belgian in his debut. Of course, Wingish will be the first of those coming out now to set a final lap of the session. So here it comes, of course, down into Tarzan into turn number 1. Of course, hard braking, and probably we'll see the majority of overtaking happen in this race. Of course, you got a little bit of a left kink and then a hard right and then this hairpin left of Hugenholtz. Got to try to use the banking a little bit, but the best way to really take that corner is get as low as possible. Of course, through turns 4, 5, and 6, and I think Wingish is actually backed off here. So potentially a little bit of a mistake, or just taking one more lap to get going. So we'll jump on board with Moy Cooley, who coming up to that Sector 1 timing marker is slightly up. So early on in his lap, so we'll have to see if he can continue to improve, trying to use all the track available. Of course, plenty of traffic around him that people are going to have to watch out for, but navigates it nicely, and of course going to be coming right up to the Sector 2 marker as he gets on the power out of turn at number 10 and into the hard braking zone of turn number 11, and he's up a 10th and change, so he's got a couple of more corners to try and make up that remainder. A little bit loose there coming out of turn number 12. Of course, 13 and 14 left to go. He's going to have DRS wide open now. Can the Ferrari take any fight to the McLaren, who currently sits on pole position? And it's Moy Cooley to the line. That lap time still only good enough for P2. Wingish, his session's over, but he currently sits still on provisional pole. Oni slightly up. Meixer is making his way around the track, but we'll jump on board with Oni, currently sitting 3rd in that Mercedes. Where does he come in as he crosses Sector 2? He's about matched his first lap time. So he's still on it. His teammate up the road of Ali, I think, went off potentially at turn number 14. Here comes Oni around the final corner and to the line. His teammate gets out of the way and he stays tight. Can he pick up any time in the final sector? He does pick up a 10th, but still only good enough for P3. Mike's are behind. Can he take the fight? That's a 108.7, so also only good enough for P4. Wingish is on provisional pole. Can Waits put any fight to him? He currently sits 5th. Also an improvement, but still only good enough for P5. And the only one who can potentially put any fights further up the order would be Robbie, but he seems to be on an in-lap. Kendrick's also sitting a lap there. He'll be P19, but your order will be Wingish from Moy Cooley, followed by Oni, Meixer, Waits, Gaming James jumping up to 6th. Some guy in 7th, so a nice showing from him. Viperize in P8, Robbie in 9th, and Joner will round out your top 10. So, of course, we're just going to be waiting for the AlphaTauri to come around. He'll cross the line, so it'll just be a matter of getting Kendrick's car into the pit lane. which shouldn't be too much longer now. But should be a very interesting race. Of course, Wingish fairly well dominating that qualifying session. But Moy Cooley seemingly going to be able to take the fight to him. And that midfield pack is probably going to be very, very tight. Of course, we could wait and see if there are potentially any changeable conditions today. Of course, no formation lap today after having some issues with it last weekend. Just went ahead and took that as a precaution across all groups. But yeah, it is finish front four. So if you're rushing, you better be careful looking at that. But followed by Waits in fifth, and got a decent chunk of people there. So should be very, very interesting. Whew. All right. I gotta stretch now because I gotta be ready. But yeah, of course, if you have any predictions for the race, definitely feel free to throw them in chat. And of course, while we're waiting for both this countdown and for drivers to get their strategies set before the start of the race, definitely take a moment, if you haven't done so already, to head on down just below the video, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Of course, definitely looking to continue to grow the league. And of course, we'll have the Gran Turismo League starting up very shortly. So if you're interested in that, I don't believe it'll be streamed just due to Gran Turismo's lobby size. But if you're interested in participating in some more endurance racing type of action, definitely let us know. We'd be happy to get you set up with an invite link to the Discord and see if you're interested. Of course, we did lose Curry there too, so hopefully that wasn't... actually, Curry was spectating, so that was what happened there. Of course, drivers getting their setups all set now. Seems to be another clear session here. Of course, we'll definitely keep an eye on that weather throughout the race, as the fun thing about online esports is just just on how much of a dime things can get set. And of course, you can hear that countdown trill going right now. So we're about to get back underway here before too much longer. But it's the McLaren on pole. It's the Ferrari in P2. 3, 4, and 5 red lights. And a bunch of jump starts, but now we're underway. Ali with a big jump start. Thomas did as well. So they're going to be trying to pick up as many places as they can as everybody makes their way through turn 1. That's a spinning Alfa Romeo. They're about 3 wide, briefly behind there for P2, but Wingish gets away clean. Moy Cooley up into second. A bunch of drivers all in the scramble out of turn 1, especially after Ali and Thomas's jump start. Dodoligo, I think, dropped down the order. JM as well, but it's Wingish currently with a half-second advantage as we make our way into turn number 7 for the first time. Of course, single file, that Alfa Romeo in the background looking to make some moves. Viperize getting a little bit of a move in there on some guys, so a nice move there as he currently leads this already second pack that's kind of forming. That's a spun Haas. That is Thomas D falling down the order, down behind. I believe just getting a little bit too happy on the throttle. There's a little bit of a scramble going on behind. There's a Red Bull, I think Waits was looking to make a move there on Gaming James, but not quite able to find a way past. We'll have to see if he gets there at turn number 1. C. Luca and Kendricks also swapping places. But again, up at the front, still a half-second advantage for Wingish over the rest of the field as we start the race. And of course, we'll take a brief look at the tire choices. So it seems to be mediums for most of the grid. Ali, of course, serving that drive-through penalty now, as will Thomas. But mediums is the tire of choice for most of the grid. Gaming James, though, opting for the softs and now potentially trying to take the fight to Mixer, to try and take back 4th place, I believe. Jojo as well, opting for the hard compound tire, so potentially trying to play a little bit of a long game, whereas C. Luca, Kendricks, and of course Thomas all opting for the softer compound of tire. So I'll have to see how their strategy pans out. But of course, lap number 2, those gaps starting to fan out a little bit. C. Luca potentially looking to make a move on Bono, but not quite able to find the room. And of course, there's your predicted pit stop strategies from AWS. Mediums to hards across most of the grid. Soft to medium, though, on the board when you swap over to JoJo. So could we be seeing soft mediums from the likes of Game James, C. Luca, or Thomas? Because I think with Kendricks, we're more likely to see a soft to hard strategy from him, as that's what he normally does. But at the end of lap number 2, that gap up the front, 4/10 between Wingish and Moycool, as that fastest lap swaps places, and we can already see a couple of races starting to form as Gaming James looking to make a move up the inside of Meixer, but I think a little bit of contact there as he tried to go up the inside, so they get loose, so Meixer's going to take that position back, so it's, still Gaming James, or it's still Meixer from Gaming James from Waits, but Viperize is already starting to lead a little bit of this second pack here. Of course, he does have some guy and Robbie behind him, but we'll have to see if the Ferrari can make a little bit of a getaway. But the gap up at the front, down to a quarter of a second. So Moycool, I think, really looking to push here in the opening stages. Of course, he is only right on his tail, but these front three potentially both looking to get him to make a getaway and maybe even try and scramble to get a couple of extra positions. And as I say that, Oni with a little bit of a mistake on the exit back at turn number 10, so that could pull Meixer, Gaming James, and Waits right into this battle. Of course, DRS now going to be available on the back of that scarlet red Ferrari, so we'll see if he can make a move as they run down into turn number 1. DRS wide open in that gap at about half a second as we come off the banking, and so he'll pick up about a quarter of a second. Gaming James as well, able to finally make that move stick, potentially on Meixer. Little switcheroo and contact, and Meixer out of the race, and that's going to bring out a virtual safety car. But yeah, I think Meixer just tried to go for the switchback, just got loose under the power, and just went right out into the side of that Red Bull car. Luckily, Gaming James seems to have come all right of it. The big winner, though, is Waits, who now has gained 2 positions from that. I agree that probably should have been a full. But yeah, I'd have to check that out just to be sure. But of course, a quick virtual and keep racing isn't awful at this point. So we'll have to wait and see when we get back underway. Shouldn't be too much longer now. Of course, as that car off the track. But of course, if you're just rejoining, big incident between Meixer and Gaming James. Meixer looking for the switchback and not quite able to make it stick. Just went out and made contact with the Red Bull and came out worse for it. I think if that does go to the stewards, it'll probably go down as just a racing incident. But of course, we'll have to wait and see for that. Of course, we're coming up to the end of the lap. As drive-through penalties for Viperize and some guy not respecting that delta and trying to have to slow down at the last second. So more drive-throughs and Viperize also having to defend from Robbie now as Robbie and some guy going side by side. And as they make their way into Hugenholtz, it's still the P6 and 7. Jojo, meanwhile, got Luca up into P11. So those hards potentially coming into focus now on that Alpine, and potentially Jojo can now go to battle with a couple of other drivers. He's now just 1 spot away from the points, but of course getting back underway here, lap number 5. Of course, Wingish swapping one way and the other. That gap up at 6/10, but the battle for second now potentially going to be growing. It's 3/4 of a second is the gap behind, but both cars with DRS, so Oni's not going to have that straight line speed advantage that he otherwise might have, unless Wingish can make a getaway. Also, as I'm saying that, Luca gets that move back done on Jojo, so a good move there. But once again, coming off the banking, the gap at about 6 or 7 tenths, so it really needs to be at about 2 or 3 tenths in order for Moycool to have a really good shot, unless he's going to dump a lot of ERS, which it seems that he is right now. Gaming James as well, able to overtake Waits. So he'll jump up back into P4. Another attempted switchback from Waits, but he'll think better of it. Give a little bit more space on Gaming James, able to hold on to the position. Up the front, though, that gap between Wingish and Moycool, it's really just Wingish, Moycool, and Oni up here at the front now. Of course, as they're making their way through that tight, twisty Sector 2. And again, I feel like Wingish just really has the power down out of turn 10 here, and that's really what's keeping him out in front. As Waits, actually, I don't know if that was an overtake or a potential mistake from Gaming James, but he's dropping right down the order. He's now down into 7th. Of course, Viperize does have that drive-through to serve, so he will eventually be down into P5. But up at this battle, up at the front, the gap now half a second. So Moy Cooley potentially looking to just push a little bit more. That gap is at 4/10 right now. Yellow flag. That's Ali out of the race, and this will be a full safety car. So the safety car comes out now. So that'll neutralize the race, and who all will jump into the pit lane? Waits will dive into the pit lane. He'll get a free stop. The leaders, of course, as Waits with a 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane. I think that's a that's a big play from Wingish, as I think he beat the safety car out of the pit lane. So he's not going to completely lose that free stop. But of course, a number of drivers taking advantage now. But yeah, I think Wingish beat the safety car out of the pit lane. So that doesn't screw over the leaders as much as it might have. It also helps everybody who elected not to pit. So could we see, I wouldn't be shocked if we see somebody like C. Luca dive into the pit lane now that there's that extra lap. Not under safety car, but that is a very big play from the leader in order to try and save a lot of his race, because otherwise it would have been great for drivers such as Waits or Gaming James, as they would have effectively gotten that free pit stop, and Waits definitely has some significant pace in that McLaren. Of course, was battling with Gaming James for P4 and P5. And the Mercedes of Oni will looked like he was going to dive into the pit lane for a second, but he's actually going to elect to stay out. So the leader's still not going to stay out. Viperize going to dive into the pit lane. Of course, he'll still have a drive-through to serve. But he'll take the opportunity to switch tires now. Also, the Red Bull of C. Luca will dive into the pit lane. He's opted for the hard tires. And we'll see if Thule dives in as well. Though it seems that he is disconnected, so I don't know if that's due to desync or just we haven't been able to get him back in yet. But of course, Viperize, of course, will have to serve that drive-through, so he'll drop back down the order. So really unlucky for him with that safety car coming out. I'd assume the lap before he intended to serve that penalty. But of course, the entire field now bunching up behind the safety car. So we'll have to see what happens here. Of course, you got drivers like Thule, Bono, Jojo, Jonah, Robbie, Oni, Moycool, and Wingish all electing to stay out on these, at this point, slightly used medium compound tires, probably sitting somewhere in about 20 to 30% wear at this point in the race, especially with heavy fuel. Of course, since we do 50%, we'll be looking at a one-stop race here. So we do still have some time left. We'll have to take a look. I guess while we've got this little bit of an interim, we can take a look at some of the position changes. Of course, this is definitely impacted by the pit stops. But I think the biggest winner right now would have to be C. Luca, currently sitting in P12. He's boxed, but he's already up 8 positions. So that's a big move there from the Red Bull, especially since his teammate Gaming James has been a little bit unlucky with some contact with Meixer and potentially also with Waits at some point. Of course, missed that incident, but saw him drop down the order a little bit. But we'll have to wait and see there. A couple other, another big winner there, Kendricks, currently sitting in 5th, and of course could potentially go to the end as well. So the Red Bull and Alpine, or the Red Bull and the Williams, sorry, both in very, very comfortable positions right now. But of course, still a lot of racing left to go. Should be 26 laps once we get back underway. But of course, we'll have to wait and see just how that goes. Of course, I believe just waiting on Thomas D to catch up to the tail of the field. I think he just got caught up in a couple of incidents earlier on in the race. I know we got that jump start penalty as well, just reacting to Ali getting underway. Of course, we'll have to keep an eye on a number of drivers. Jojo, out of the drivers that haven't pitted, may be in the best current situation, especially considering that those hard compound tires are probably at the point where they're equal or better than those mediums. Of course, I haven't had a whole ton of time to test tire wear here around Zandvoort, as it looks like we'll get one extra lap under safety car. unless we get a late trigger here, which we very well might, and we do get a little bit. Okay, it's not quite so bad, as you still have some time to wait, but of course, the pack going to be bunching up, and of course, you got to wait for the safety car to be fully in the pit lane before you get back underway, and Wingish keeping a pretty hot pace as of right now, so we'll have to jump on as Curry able to get back in. Thule and Viperize swapping spots. Where will the McLaren will go now? Let's see if he seems to have gotten a fairly decent jump on Moy Cooley, as Robbie and Joan are side by side. Robbie up to spots, and it's 2x2 behind briefly. That's as Haas getting a little bit loose, so that was Joner, I think, getting a little bit loose under the power. And the scramble through the first couple of corners, Joner going to put a nice little move there in on Bono to move up into P6. Thule, of course, in AI, is going to be dropping down the order. Viperize sadly serving that drive-through, but of course he'll at least still be in the race and away from some of this carnage. But Wingish with a good enough with a good enough restart rather, to get underway, as I'm actually going to turn off notifications briefly. Apologize about that. There we go. But yeah, of course, sitting on lap number 10 here, Waits as well, able to overtake Bono, but it does have a penalty, so we'll check what that is in a second. There's a Red Bull as well looking to go down the inside of the Aston Martin. It's Gaming James on Bono as well, so some of those new tires coming into focus now. As that's a spun Haas, that is Thomas dropping down the order. So I think Thomas is getting swamped by a lot of those newer tire runners. And of course, if there was an incident there, that'll of course be the steward's review. But Waits already on the restart here, up into P7. Bono diving into the pit lane. He's done on those tires. So he'll dive in, as will some guy. So Aston Martin double stack. So a little bit of a missed call there, as some guy going to actually retire from the session. So that's our third DNF of the race. Of course, that's in the pit lane. So that will not throw a safety car as of this point. But the gap up at the front, 3/10. So Moy Cool, much closer now than he's been on past laps, potentially pushing really hard to try and take the lead of this race. Of course, no DRS still for one more lap. As you can see on that mini-map down below, the field very tight. P1 to P8 all in a train together. And then, that train also very close. You got Jamie down there in P9. Decent battle for P6 brewing, as a couple of cars within a couple of tenths. That's a little touch on the ground for Joner, and that's going to open the door for Waits to go make an opportune move there. So that's the McLaren already up into P6 on those hard compound tires. So a good move there from one McLaren. From one McLaren to another, DRS now enabled. So can Moy Cool finally get that move done? As Gaming James as well, going to go down the inside of the Haas of Joner. He's going to make that move stick. So just kind of one by one, Waits and Gaming James seem to be trying to pick off just every driver here and there. And so potentially using a little bit of a karting strategy and just kind of following somebody through who definitely has pace. And, we saw a little bit of battling going on between James and Wick, so potentially working together a little bit to try and get as far up the order as possible. And though I say that, that gap very tight between the two between those two there. Meanwhile, up the front, that gap about 4/10. We know probably needs to be at about 3.5, 4/10 once we come off the banking in order for Moy Cool to have a shot into turn one, into Tarzan. And of course, into the chicane, that gap sits at half a second. We've seen how strong Moy Cool is. And that's Waits going very deep. Waits is out. That's a virtual safety car and carnage there as everybody tries to slow down. Gloon Jamie with a 5-second penalty. What happened there? As it seems that the McLaren just went straight on. What happened there to Waits? But a big crash. There, a number of collisions. And so Oni dives into the pit lane. Robbie gets a 5-second penalty. Who else diving in? Oni, for some reason, is on Inter. So could the rain be coming? Is there rain coming? And is Oni potentially trying to pull a move here? Or was that just a mistake from the Mercedes? What is going on right now? Gwoon Jamie opting for soft and a new front wing. So is there rain in the forecast? If we take a look at those clouds, it looks like they are getting a little bit darker now. So could we see rain shortly? Is Oni potentially trying to make a massive play course, he currently sits P10 on those inners on a dry track. We'll have to see how this goes for him. But if this works out for him, if the rain's coming in the next, 5 minutes, that could be a masterful call from the Mercedes. Of course, that could also explain why a number of drivers up at the front elected to stay out, because they knew that rain was in the forecast. So potentially that could be some of the impetus between some drivers staying out. But again, a big winner here, Jojo. Kendricks has managed to work his way up into P5 after the shuffling in the pit lane. But of course, definitely going to have to wait and see what comes of that incident. We definitely need to see what happened there to Waits. Seems to have been something, but that McLaren went very deep at turn number 11, so it'll definitely be interesting what the stewards think of that. Of course, taking a jump on board with Wingish. Those clouds looking, not massively ominous, but certainly could be quickly, as Gaming James going to retire from the session as well. So that's another DNF from the race. So yeah, Kendricks went soft to mediums instead of to hards. And, again, just based on jumping on board here, it does look like rain is in the forecast. So definitely keep an eye on Oni in this Mercedes. Of course, being on inters on a dry track is going to be painful for him. But if he can, but those inners will also be up to temperature immediately. He won't have to worry once the rain does start falling, if it's falling as quick, falls as soon and as fast as he might think. We'll have to wait and see, because we saw, maybe a similar situation, with Group 2 in Austria last time out, where I think we had one or two where, everybody wanted to pile in to the pit lane at the first sign of rain under safety cars. First sign of rain, as safety car is in this lap. So we should be getting back underway here shortly. And Wingish is, once again, keeping a decent pace with the safety car. He wants to get right back underway, it seems. But yeah, he's keeping a fairly quick pace as the clouds continuing to darken. Remember, at the start of the race, it was pretty bright and clear. So Wingish going to try and potentially look to get going as quickly as possible. Pulled the trigger pretty much right at the pit lane last time. He'll pull the trigger at about the same place again. He is going to dodge the limit, and we are back under green flag conditions. And as Jojo immediately looking to the inside of the Ferrari, but he's got a Haas around the outside that he needs to be careful of. He's going to be side-by-side with the Williams and Kendricks as well. Williams and Joan are side-by-side, and Kendricks up into P4, so a good move there from the Williams, as there's a Red Bull in the background. Let's see Luca looking to make a move, and a whole bunch of drivers scrambling. Everybody through the first couple of corners. Okay, and still Wingish has that lead. It's a 3/10 gap behind Oni with a big loss. He's, I think, really struggling for pace. Already fallen off the back of the field. Of course, dropped 2 positions already and probably will drop a couple of more before all is said and done. Viperize, I think, maybe getting tapped a little bit by Thomas behind him, but they seem to get out okay. Thomas having to defend from Robbie is Oni now down into P14, so the gamble, at least as of right now, not paying off for the Mercedes, is that he could not be hoping that rain comes any sooner. Of course, coming into turns number 13 and 14 now, through that right-hander. Let's see, is Moikuli gonna dump that ERS and try to get in? Of course, gonna have a slipstream advantage. 3/10 is the gap. 2/10 is gonna take a peek to the inside, but he's closer than he has been. So the Ferrari looking to finally get that move done, as those mediums on the leaders, and probably even Jojo's hards, probably screaming out in pain as a big crash again. That's JM out of the race. There was a crash at turn 1. That's a spun Ferrari. JM out of the race. Viperize involved. And we've got another safety car here. So I think that call really not working out for Oni, as he currently does sit in P11. But yeah, there was it looked like a bit of a pile there. Not fully sure what happened, but of course, again, going to have to wait for the stewards. But once again, Moikul's charge going to be quashed just a little bit by another safety car, period. And that could also end up bringing the rain now. So we'll have to see how some of this continues. But of course, definitely Zandvoort, a very challenging place to overtake and overtake correctly, especially if you're getting a little bit frustrated and really want to get that move done. And so, I'm obviously not sure if that's some of what we're seeing. Drivers just wanting to, try and make as many moves. Of course, a ton of drivers on different strategies, including one of our drivers opting for an aggressive play on the inters that I think just hasn't worked out. Of course, we'll have to now wait and see what everybody elects to do. There's a Jojo diving into the pit lane, as is Kendricks will follow. I believe that was an Alfa Romeo of Dodoligo into the pits. Gawoon Jamie will dive in, as will, who is that? As will a couple other drivers. Jojo and Dodoligo, though, making the play for inters, so maybe they see rain now. Jamie will grab inters, as will Bono. Viperize as well, getting a new front wing, but is going to stay on slicks for the moment. So now, those green tires starting to line that timing tower a little bit, and of course taking a look on board, can't really see the rain right now on the halo of the McLaren. So it's definitely an interesting decision, and potentially could be them just following Oni's lead. But I'd have to assume that at this point, rain must be imminent. Otherwise, I wouldn't understand why quite so many drivers would opt for the intermediate compound of tire. Of course, the leaders of Wingish and Moycool electing to stay out. Kendricks is probably in the best spot out of anybody right now, especially anybody on slicks. As he currently has the youngest mediums. Of course, you got Robbie and Thule with 4-lap old hards on, so they should be in a decent enough position as of right now. As there's the rain now starting to fall here at the circuit Zandvoort. So now will people pull the trigger? And this is definitely going to help out Oni. Will everybody elect to dive into the pit lane now? Here comes the leaders. Wingish, Moycool, Kendricks in, Jonah in, Lucas staying out. Wingish gets a 5-second penalty for speeding as the rain starts to fall, so that's a big loss for him. Luca potentially making a miscall there and electing to stay out now, as we should be getting back underway next lap, which means Oni should lead this race on the restart. Jojo now in a great spot. Dodoligo, Jamie, Bono, Wingish is going to come out all the way back in P8, and P8 now. And now everybody, with the exception of Thule, who is sadly in AI mode, everybody opting for those intermediate tires. And now we're going to have a wet race. So, of course, everybody now going to have to relearn those braking points. As you can see, fairly big raindrops now falling. So this track going to get wet fairly quickly, which also means that Moycool will no longer have that DRS advantage. So Wingish, even with that 5-second penalty, may be able to stay ahead and even start to pull away, especially if he's running that little bit more downforce that might be helpful in these tricky conditions. Of course, going to have 18 laps left to go as safety car now in this lap. And so it will be potentially Luca leading the way, though I'd imagine he's not going to stay out on those tires for another lap. I think he's going to try and, stay as close to that safety car as possible, just that way he can lose as little time as possible. So we'll at least jump on board with Oni, who also has a nice little buffer of the Alpha Tauri behind him. So what will Luca's strategy be? I think he's going to tiptoe his way around the final corner. Is he going to jerk to the right? No, he's actually going to stay out. So Luca potentially trying to wait, maybe try and hope that there's a safety car incident behind him. As the Alpines doing very solid. They're currently 3rd and 4th. There's an Alfa Romeo right there. There's a McLaren looking to make his way past. Bono, as basically single file. There's a Williams of Kendricks trying to look around the outside, but Moycool currently sits 6th. Wingish got a nice little move there Dodoligo and is going to try and get another. Was that contact behind? He's trying to go around the outside of Bono, who's going to keep it in there. Is Bono going to get two there? Yes, he will, as the Alfa Romeo got into him. But the Alfa Romeo with contact, and it's Wingish back down the inside. Kendricks with a great move. He's up into 7th. Moy Cool goes wide. He's in the gravel. A bit of chaos there, but Wingish up into P5 after getting a switchback on 2 drivers. Kendricks also being very advantageous there as the spray comes out of no. Soaked now. Hey, so Luca going to be a fish out of water here. I'd imagine he's got to dive into the pit lane. But he and Jojo with a little bit of a breakaway here, and there goes the Red Bull into the pit lane. So now it's actually no, it's Jojo leading the race. It's Oni in P2. Wingish will find his way up to P3 after he gets around Gawoon Jamie, who's going to try to box him in, but not quite going to be able to do it. And so Wingish really trying to look to make moves now, as that McLaren looks absolutely rapid in these wet conditions. And look at the traction he's getting compared to Oni. Early on, he's going to try to make a move as we run up the hill at the end of Sector 1. The Mercedes going to defend the inside. Side by side, the McLaren right round the outsides. All right, and that's a great move there from Wingish. He's absolutely scything through the field early on in these wet conditions. And he's just going to look to now absolutely pull away from everybody as he seems to absolutely have aced setup and strategy for this wet weather call. Of course, lots of spray now, so we won't have any DRS advantage. But of course, Wingish does have that 5-second time penalty, so we'll see if he can open that up in these next 16 laps. But of course, a lot of time left, and he's already into the slipstream of Jojo. Of course, those tires only 1 lap newer, but absolutely scything through the field. Kendrick's able to overtake Bono. He's up into P5. Bono is going to tap the back of Kendrick's, but no harm, no foul, it seems. As Kendrick's with a great race so far, as he's all the way up into P5 after starting from the tail of the field. And of course, now he's going to have the chance to go after Gawoon Jamie. Meanwhile, back out the front, though, it's a 2/10 gap between the 2 leaders, and the McLaren looks to have a chance for a second there, but not quite going to have it. They're going to still stay single file as they make their way into turns number 9 and 10. That's a big twitch there from the McLaren as he's looking to make that move. Thomas D up into 6th. Gawoon Jamie and Kendrick side by side. Kendrick's looking to go around the outside, but in the battle for the lead, Jojo going to try to fend off the McLaren, and as they come up into this hard braking zone, the McLaren's still going to stay behind, potentially just saving that run for the run down into Tarzan into turn number 1. Jamie and Kendrick still battling side by side, and Jamie are able to hold him off for now. Of course, as we come into the banking, that gap at about a 1/10 and a half to 2/10. Let's see if Jojo elects to defend and how he does. Here comes Wingish. He's going to take a peek down the inside, side by side into the braking zone for turn 1. And Wingish retakes the lead of the race here on lap number 22 in the rain. And the McLaren going to now look to try and maybe pull away from the Alpine. Oni currently sits in third, in a fairly comfortable third. Kendrick's actually potentially had an incident there with Gawoon Jamie as he dropped down the order. Joner and Bono able to racing side by side, and the Haas up into P5, so now he's going to have his crack at the Alpine as the Aston Martin behind of Bono seemingly really struggling in these tricky wet conditions, at least compared to some of the cars around him who just seem to have a significant amount more pace. Wingish also opening that gap up to a 1.5 seconds, so good showing there from him. There's actually Thomas D looking up the inside at turn number 10 as Bono got in a little bit of an uncomfortable line, a little bit of banging wheels there. Are we going to see it? No, please don't give me a 3 wide there, as actually it'll come out all right. I thought we were going to get 3 wide into turn number 11 there for a second. Again, a little tap on the back of the Aston Martin from the AlphaTauri of Robbie, but Haas 5 and 6 right now, so looking to try to have as good a day as Alpine are currently having, though Wingish with a 2.3 second gap up at the front. Of course, JoJo leading for a couple laps. Oni now with a 3-second gap up ahead to JoJo, but also a 2-second gap behind. Dodoligo able to overtake Dodoligo and Viperize, battling through Tarzan. They're going to be side by side. But Dodoligo with that outside line getting a little bit of a better exit, but they'll stay side by side as they make their way into turn number 3. Little bit of contact there as Dodoligo, I think, Dodoligo seemed to lost the back end. Viperize spins, so that's 2 spins from the Alfa Romeo and the Ferrari. So they're both really struggling. There's no front wing on Viperize's car. Dodoligo does have a front wing. He didn't receive any damage from that. So Dodoligo up into 10th. Luca coming up to the back of that Ferrari very quickly. Almost an incident there. But just a day that, Viperize, I would assume would be hoping would be going a lot better. Just hasn't quite fell his way today. Of course, Kendricks and Bono, the closest battle currently on track. And you can see that amount of spray on the back of these cars. So I think could be put very quickly, it seems, approaching wet weather conditions. And though, of course, we'll have to wait and see on that front. And through the banking, let's see if Kendricks can have a little bit of a run here on Bono. That gap at about a quarter of a second, 2/10, 1/10. He's going to go to the inside. And he is going to get that move done. So Kendricks back up into P8 for Williams. So a good showing there from him, and now has the chance to try and close that gap to the AlphaTauri of Sneaky Robbie up ahead. Meanwhile, Wingish just absolutely flying in these conditions as that gap is opened right up to 4.8 seconds. So that McLaren set up perfectly for this intermediate conditions, as Viperize is going to retire from the session. So that's another DNF. So 7 DNFs already. So it's become a little bit of a race for, a bit of a race of attrition here. As down to 13 drivers. Of course, Dodoligo having to dive into the pit lane. But really this front not, Wingish has pulled away. He'll probably continue to do so. We'll definitely keep an eye on what the battle for third could become, as JoJo and Oni could potentially have a nice fight. And of course, there's a big battle for fourth underway, as 4th down to 9th, all fairly close to one another, but Jamie seemingly able to hold off the pack for the moment. Of course, definitely can be fun to race in wet weather when you got people that are very respectful around you, as the Alpine of Gu and Jamie going to defend that inside. The Haas of Thomas going to look even further to the inside, but not quite going to have the move there. And actually tries to get a better exit there and actually goes into the back of him, so hopefully no damage. Thomas potentially looking to make a move into turn number 3, but going to hold off on that. Is very wet. At this point, you can see just how much water there is on track. And we could be quickly approaching wet weather conditions now, as that's a bit of a poor exit there from Thomas, who's got his teammate now right on him. But, Joner doing a nice job of being a little bit of a rear gunner, able to hold off Robbie. But wet weather can be really, really challenging to race in, especially with people who have people of similar pace. I think, again, going back to Group 2 Austria, which of course features myself actually racing, which you'll be able to hopefully see tomorrow, should nothing happen. But you could sometimes, with these wet weather races, especially on a circuit where there's only 1 or 2 spots to overtake, can be a real challenge. You might really only get 1, 2, 3 chances over the course of a whole bunch of laps to get that pass done, where you actually, manage to get enough of a run to get side by side. It's challenging, it's fun, and we'll have to see if Thomas can finally get this done on Jamie. It's closing once again. He's going to look to the outside this time. Jamie going to defend it, though. He's going to tuck right to the inside, but that Haas going to have a better exit along the outside. They're side by side once again through turns 2 and 3, but that Alpine going to have the inside initially and then be able to take the outside, and that Haas going to have to yield once again. Actually, the Haas is side by side now. Joner's going to looks like going to take a crack. Here comes Robbie, though. He's right on the back. That's 3 cars within about 3/10 of each other, and so they're very close. And Kendrick's now right up to the back. So we got 4 cars very, very tightly battling here. 2 of them being teammates. So hopefully we don't have a Hamilton and Rosberg incident. Thomas D with a bit of a poor exit there. Though that helps his teammate get a little bit more space. Kendricks and Robbie, though, very tight. That's a spin there for Dodoligo. But the rest of that field seemed to hold firm as of right now. So it's still Jamie just off the podium in P4. Joner in 5th, Thomas, Robbie, and Kendricks. All potentially going to get involved in this battle for P4. As with the starting of this lap, it's 10 left to go. So still 10 minutes to try and find a way past potentially this Alpine. Meanwhile, in this battle for P2, Oni drawn ever so closer to JoJo out in front. Of course, all the points matter, but JoJo will have the tire wear advantage. Yellow flag in Sector 2, that's Dodoligo again. I think just really struggling to keep that car pointed the right way. Of course, is going to be passed by Wingish, who has been absolutely dominant in this wet weather. And of course, about 10 laps, he's gone from about 8th to an 8-second lead. As I say that, Joan are able to get the move done on Gawoon Jamie, and that's going to open the door for his teammate of Thomas to go down the inside as they make their way into turns number 8 and 9, and both Hasses able to find their way past the Alpine. So currently the Haas duo in 4th and 5th. After a nice little double move there, Joner, I think a little bit of a mistake there from Jamie, opened the door for Joner, who was able to put Jamie enough off his line where his teammate of Thomas able to find a way past. So the Haas duo, doing very nicely here. As Dodoligo going to dive into the pit lane, and he is going to retire as well after going that lap down. So both Alfa Romeos out of the race. And there's a Williams behind of Kendricks looking to make a move down the inside of the Alpha Tauri. Of course, once again, it's going to be outside, inside, outside. So can that Williams make it stick? He's going to get a nice little block pass in there. So a nice little pass there from Kendricks to figure out that he had the space there and come across. And that's a nice little overtake there from the Williams to move up into P7. Of course, now he'll have a crack at Gawoon Jamie, and maybe even a chance to go after both of the Haas cars just out ahead. Meanwhile, up in the battle for P2, that gap now down to 1.2, 1.3 seconds between JoJo and Oni. Of course, this very well could come down to the last couple of laps. As JoJo has definitely seemed fairly comfortable in this wet weather. Of course, taking a jump on board. Actually, as I say that, looks to be a little bit of a struggle there. Though it seems to be a struggle that Oni experienced too, as there sounded to be a little bit of wheel spin on the Alpine, but that gap's still at 1.3 seconds. Meanwhile, Joner and Thomas starting to pull away a little bit from Gawoon Jamie. The gap from, Joner's got a 1.4 second gap now back to his teammate, which briefly was a 4/10 gap from himself back to Kendricks, who at the time was 3 places behind him. But as of right now, the Haas duo showing a nice little bit of teamwork to get up into those positions. Meanwhile, closest battle on track at the moment is going to be the battle between Gawoon Jamie and Kendricks. So, of course, they're going to have the opportunity to go at it once again. I think they went at it once before, and potentially something came of it. Of course, we'll have to wait and see. Of course, that track very, very wet now. And it seems to be some standing water. And Kendricks runs very deep there at turn number 8. And so almost, potentially now under threat from Robbie and Bono behind, as he had to save that Williams from going wide. So potentially getting very close to wet weather conditions. As you can see, those tracks of the cars ahead not staying around for much longer. So drivers going to have to be really, really careful in these last 7 laps or so to try and keep their cars together. So that makes the closest battle on track. Actually, it's still Kendricks. It's Kendricks and Robbie. But I think the biggest battle right now would be JoJo and Oni. That gap closing very quickly. Gawoon Jamie actually diving into the pit lane. That's very surprising. So he doesn't think those tires will last. I don't know if he think those tires will last. So potentially a puncture, or potentially the wet weather playing a factor. He might have wanted wet tires there. So could that have been the decision there for Jamie? that sadly didn't go his way as he didn't get those tires set. It also promotes Luca up into P9, so Jamie's going to have to try and find a way around him, and he also has that penalty that he has to be careful with. Meanwhile, the Haas duo of Joner and Thomas, very close on track, as is Jojo and Oni. So I think Jojo, as the rain has continued to fall, has just kind of started to fall off the pace a little bit. As he actually dips into the gravel there, gets a lot of curb and is going to be very slow on exit there. Trying to get on the power, lots of wheel spin. They're actually going to go side by side even before the banking. And that's actually going to be Oni getting up into P2 with about on lap number 31, start of lap 32. Here comes Jojo back at him, though. He's going to go right back down the inside, hard braking, and they're going to go side by side. A little bit of contact there. The Alpine going to keep it in. Another outside, inside, outside. Generally, this would work out for the Alpine, but the Mercedes is able to get that move done, and Oni up into P2, and we'll see if he can start to pull away. You can see a lot of moisture, a lot of rain droplets now on that Mercedes. It is rather wet now. Of course, as they drop over the hill, it is now Oni trying to make a little bit of a getaway, but we saw how much straight line speed Jojo has. Of course, I believe he's a Swede. Of course, got the Swede versus the Finn here. As we saw a lot of Finnish Civil War in the drawing, but now see a little bit of battle here. But I think Oni, just has that car attuned a little bit more to allow it to be run in the wet. Of course, not quite as much as Wingish, and is now starting to pull away a little bit. That gap up to 8/10 as Wingish crosses the line. It is going to be 5 laps left to go. Of course, 32, 33, 34, 35, and 36 left to complete. But it's been a great race really for Wingish. Definitely got a little bit lucky with some of the safety cars, but sometimes that's just something that comes up and that you got to deal with. But fended off Moycool in the dry very nicely. Just had enough pace to really keep him at bay and keep him behind very nicely. And of course, once that wet weather came, he's been absolutely able to take off with that little bit of extra downforce. The Haas duo in 4th and 5th, very solid as well. Of course, while we got the chance, we can take a look at penalties. It's 5 seconds, so actually Jamie was able to overtake Lucas, so those tires being really good. In terms of driver of the day, it'll probably come down to both Thomas D and Kendricks, as Moycool is going to retire in the pit lane. I thought potentially we'd get a late race safety car as I scrambled there. But yeah, I think driver of the day is definitely going to come down to either Thomas or Kendricks. Luca as well has had a very nice race. Of course, currently sitting in P10. But yeah, I think it'll come down to one of those two, as that will be our 9th DNF of the session, as both Ferraris now out of the race. Of course, battle for P6 going on right now between Kendricks and Robbie. And of course, Kendricks, I think, was having that battle with Wound Jamie and just went a little bit too deep at turn number 8. Just went off into the gravel and lost a lot of time. You can see the duo of Hasses up the road a little bit, so they're going to be hoping for a little bit of an incident, but Kendrick's able to hold Robbie at bay as we cross the line with 4 laps left to go. Of course, definitely stay tuned for more LSR action in the future. Of course, we'll have Group 2 and potentially Group 3 tomorrow, as well as, races for the next, I believe, 7 weekends after this. As of course, this is round number 8 of 15. So definitely subscribe if you haven't already, just to give you a little bit of a sneak peek at the rest of our calendar. We've, of course, got kind of in order the next couple weeks. We've got Australia, Hungary, Abu Dhabi, Singapore, Bahrain, Mexico, and the season finale at Brazil. As of right now, of course, we're going to be looking to potentially try and get Austria rescheduled, of course, after everything that happened last weekend, but still working on getting that sorted. Luckily, we still got a little bit of time to sort that out. Of course, not too much, But once we do, we'll be sure to give everybody an update as Groon Jamie gets that moved on Bono and is able to get back up into P8. So the Alpine looking to go to Joner and Thomas. A lot of great teamwork there. I know from what I know, they both came into LSR together. So really good teammate from there, and especially good to really maximize what they could do today. Of course, currently sitting 4th and 5th. Alpine with a solid day as well. He got JoJo in 3rd and Jamie in 8th. Of course, I think there was a little. Will be 2 laps to go next time across the line. Of course, Wing has definitely been absolutely rapid recently. There's so much pace in that McLaren, and definitely would be interesting to see him, race with guys. Definitely would be interesting to see where his pace sits next to guys like Mango, like Bethon, like Yuki, like Sav. But I think he can definitely be up there. And it's definitely great to watch every week, especially in Group 1. Of course, if you enjoy it, definitely hit the like and subscribe down below. And if you want to join, let us know, and we'd be happy to get you set up with a Discord. Lap and a half left to go from Wingish, so he's coming up to the back of Thule there in AI. But I think Kendrick's able to pull that gap back out a little bit as those tires on Robbie's car are starting to struggle a little bit more. And Kendrick's just not quite able to find a little bit of a rhythm there in turn number 8. Oh, the mic keeps cutting. Apologies there. That might be... That might have just been, me messing with the port a little bit. So apologies about that. That also is my voice cutting out every now and again because it's been 36 fairly eventful laps. Okay, I'll definitely be sure to give that a look. That may be internet on my end as well, just being a little bit stressed out as well. But I'll definitely look into that and make sure that's fixed. Of course, starting the last lap here, it's been a dominant day for Wingish, of course, able to open that gap up to now over 20 seconds. I'm really just able to absolutely scythe through the field. Of course, definitely had a bit of a fight behind him from Moikul. In the dry conditions, but just going for that extra downforce, and I'd assume extra ride height too, has really helped out the blue and orange machine. Of course, his teammate of Waits caught up in that big incident down here at turn 11 at one point in the race. A couple of big wrecks, more than a couple of safety cars. But Wingish has managed it very well. Just a couple of corners left to go now. Of course, just the right-hander and the banking left to go. And then he's home free. Of course, the gap now up to 22 seconds, so that 5-second penalty will not matter. And once again, it will be Wingish winning the Dutch Grand Prix here at Zandvoort in changeable conditions. So it's McLaren on top. I think it's just the port because he can still... Yeah, I assume that's what it is. I don't know if you can still hear me right now, but I assume it's just me. Just kind of how I was holding the controller. But here comes Oni out the banking for the final time. He'll come home to finish P2. And a good overall race for him in a last lap potential battle as JoJo going to come home for P3 and round out the podium. It's the Haas duo in 4th and 5th. Kendricks is in 6th. Jamie actually able to get Robbie. He's up into P7, though, of course, after that penalty, it won't matter. But, last lap pass there from him. So it'll be Robbie in 7th. Bono will come around to finish 9th. And Say Luca on his debut for Red Bull. Actually, Oni left the session, but I did believe finish P8. Actually, no, or Oni was 2nd, so we're good there. But yeah. Oni will be P2, even though he left the session. But of course, congratulations to everybody for that. Of course, Kendricks once again winning driver of the day. So good to see there. But congratulations to all the drivers. It was a good race. So it's it is McLaren from Mercedes from Alpine, which we'll fix later. But it's the Finn on the top step once again. But Wingish takes home the win, followed by what will be Oni after we fix that. As the time is still there. It's just because he left. Fastest lap would have gone to Gaming James. However, he retired before the end of the race, so no bonus point. But it's Wingish, Jojo, Joner. Thomas in his home Grand Prix finishes in 4th. Kendricks, Robbie, Jamie as well in his home race finishes in 8th. Bono then 9th, Luca in 10th, and Thule would be 11th. So, of course, thank you for joining as always. Definitely tune in tomorrow for some Group 2 action, as that field very tight, so it should be hopefully a barnstormer without too many incidents. I hope you have a great rest of your day or evening, wherever you are, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.